Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another weekly wrap up. And today I am so excited. We have 3 6-star books to talk about. 2 of them were rereads, but one of them was originally not a 6-star book, but upon reread, I just had to boost it up to it because it honestly, I loved it even more this time and I appreciated it for what it was. So I can't wait to get into that. Also, this week is covering 90% of what I read during the Romance Takeover Readathon, but I know not everyone wants to watch Readathon vlogs. My vlogs don't do that well on this channel. That's why they are a Patreon exclusive. But we're still going to talk about the books, and if you do want to watch that vlog, it will be up in a couple of days, maybe even the day after this one. I don't know. We'll see how quick I get it edited. So when I do readathon vlogs and things like that, that's usually the only time I put vlogs on the main channel. Otherwise, they are for my patrons, which, speaking of patrons and channel members, I would like to give a shout out to 3 new channel members this week, which is great, we have, and pardon me if I don't pronounce this right, I'm so sorry, Mei Lee, joined as a dedicated diva. What Helen Reads joined as a romantic renegade, and Lonnie C joined as a fated friend. So thank all 3 of you, and of course all of my patrons and channel members who help me be able to do this full time. This is my full-time job and I just love it. We're coming up on a year now. I will be putting up a question form soon because I'm going to film my 1 year as a booktuber, where today is officially 11 months or so, which is just blows my mind. It blows my mind. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into the books. We only have 9 to talk about today, but they were 9 really good books. So the first one that I read was a recommendation from a viewer. I got this on my book recommendation form, which is always linked in the description down below. And this one was The Monster Keeps Me Safe by Kitty Thomas. Now, I thought I had read a Kitty Thomas before, but it doesn't appear that I have. So I think this is officially my first one. I mean, I've definitely heard of Kitty Thomas before, so it's not because I thought I'd read one, but apparently I hadn't. So this one, though, was very interesting, all right? It's so hard to explain this book because the explanation of it would be a spoiler in a way, but The Monster Keeps Me Safe is, let's just say our heroine, Elodie, she has amnesia. And when we start the book with her, she is with one man who says he's her husband, and they are living in an abandoned amusement park because he says the end of the world has happened, and they've been living here for a while now, and she had an accident where she forgot her memory, and that makes it very inconvenient because she doesn't remember any of the apocalypse happening or the end of the world happening. And let's just say, besides her having amnesia, number 1, there's a reason why she doesn't remember the end of the world happening. And number 2, the man that she begins this novel with is not the one that she ends this novel with. And we're not mad about it. So yeah, that's really all that I can say. This book, I would consider a dark romance. The man who ends up being our love interest, we won't call him a hero, he has some assassin skills, we'll call him that. There are some captive elements. Let me see, what else can I say? The kinks that get in here, we do have some degradation, bondage, and BDSM brought in. And the trigger warnings are probably the kidnapping, gaslighting, and yeah, there's not too much that I can say. But for a review for those of you who have read this, and I don't know if there was a name for who recommended this one because I can't remember that, but I can see why this was recommended to me because this was wild. Like I said, I will say I was very excited by the fact that it seemed to be an end of the world book, and I was disappointed by how it changed. And I feel like it was a mean bait and switch, but I love apocalypse romance. Like, I love them. So maybe that's a me thing. But I did think, and I say, I've never read a book like it. That's absolutely true. But also the issue for me is that I didn't feel connected to either of the characters. You're going to hear me say that a couple times in my reviews this week, because it's something that I'm becoming more aware of when an author does rely too much on a bonkers plot and not enough on making me connect with the characters. Because the thing that is supposed to work for me, no matter how bonkers your story gets, is that I feel connected to the characters, so that when the bonkers plot is going on, I still feel very grounded in the people. And, you know, like, that's what I said about The Wolf and the Wildflower, the new Stacey readout, is that does have a bonkers plot. But I loved James and Jules so much, and how they were getting to know one another and their connection, that I didn't care so much about maybe the unbelievability or the bonkers level of some other things. And in this case, because I didn't have that, I didn't believe it. So let's go with that. So this book I did give 3 stars, and it's a 3 on the spice scale for me. What I will say is this isn't super long. So if you want to try this bonkers book and see the elements that I'm having to be very vague about, I don't think you'll consider it a waste of your time. I just wasn't connecting with it the way that I wanted to. So that's where we're at with that. Okay. Next, I was trying to squeeze in some Patreon reads before the Readathon started, and so I went ahead and did King of the Court by R.S. Gray. One of my patrons, this is one of their favorite books from last year, and so they asked me to annotate it, which I did. And this was kind of funny because I actually owned this book on ebook, because I can't stop myself. I usually buy most of R.S. Gray's new releases, and then I just don't get around to them, because one of the things for me is that the good thing about her is that, okay, some of her books connect, because I know if I say none of her books really connect, people will argue with me. Yes, some of them connect vaguely through side characters they do, but she doesn't have really any series where you can like fall for characters and then be waiting for your book. She really just kind of writes whatever story she wants with whatever tropes she wants, which in theory is a great idea, because I'm sure for her as an author, it helps her not feel like tied down to anything. But for me, it makes me lose my enthusiasm for like starting a new book, because usually what pushes me to continue with an author is that I have really fallen for their characters and I want to keep going. And also her books have been very inconsistent with me, because she changes like everything for each book she does. You know, like I couldn't tell you what type of writing R.S. Gray has. Does that make sense? Like, I couldn't break it down and say, this is what I know I'm going to get from her books, because she does something completely brand new every time, which again, not the worst thing ever, but it makes it difficult for me, as that's what I like to connect to. You know, falling for an author and their entire backlist because they connect to each other is something that I love to do. That being said, I was really gung-ho about diving into this, because I had bought this on ebook, I had started it, and I just wasn't in the mood for a sports romance. So that means it didn't get read, because I had no previous attachment to these characters. So this is Ben and Raylyn. Ben is in town for Olympic training for the summer games, and they are in little old Pine Hill, Texas, where they are like going to this camp. And so Raylyn, she is in this town. She had left college because her grandmother is sick, and she had been like, she'd given that up. She's working at a small diner to take care of her grandmother, and this is really about kind of our hero's only in town for 2 weeks, and this is about kind of a fling that they have while they're there. And then some after effects, because we have part 2 of the novel, which takes place 18 months later, and we see kind of ramifications of stuff that had happened. I am putting that forward because for me, it is a content warning for there to be a time jump. I need to know going into stuff that there's time jumps, because I had a feeling that it was coming up. I didn't peek ahead since I was reading this for a patron and I wanted to have my like genuine reactions. but I had a feeling that a time jump was coming, and I started to get very angry. Like, I wrote in the book, I was like, if there's a time jump and it's ridiculous, this book is going to be rated very low. Like, I was getting so fiery about it. And also because our hero, he's currently going through a divorce, and like, our heroine is never told that he's still, like, currently married, even though she had cheated on him and they're getting a divorce. And it's not that I think it's wrong that he's moving on and sleeping with this girl, but he did not tell her. And part of it is like, everyone's supposed to know because he's a famous guy, and she could have Googled him, but, like, he knew she hadn't Googled him. Like, she said, I didn't want to know more about you. I just want to know you for who you are. And this is only supposed to be 2 weeks. Like, he knew she didn't Google him. And so I had an extreme issue with him not saying that. Legally, I'm still, like, married to her, but we're working through this, right? And then I will put up a little spoiler card because I'm going to spoil what leads us to the time jump. Of course, it's, like, the end of the summer. And then we have we have 2 trigger warnings for me that happened, like, bam, bam. So this book, the second half, had a hill to climb. Okay, so I'm going to put up the little spoiler tag for this right now. If you don't want to know those twists, you're going to read R.S. Gray, that's fine. I will tell you, I did end up giving it 4 stars. So I'll tell you how it worked out for me, but I'm going to tell you what went wrong for me. So, boom, boom. His almost ex-wife shows up and she's pregnant. She got pregnant the very last time they had sex together, which was a few months ago. You know, like, it was a few months ago, and she's pregnant. So immediately I'm like, oh my God. And, like, it's not that the hero wants to run back to her or anything, but the heroine is like, well, he might want to get back with her if they're going to have a kid, not realizing, like, she is into the man that she's currently with. Like, she has a boyfriend who's not going to leave her because she's pregnant, but she's telling him that she's pregnant, right? And then the second thing is, so he needs to go to spring training. He needs to go to the Olympic Games. That needs to happen. And then her grandmother dies, and she ends up going back to school to finish her degree and is going for what she's going for. And that's where we have this 18-month gap. And when those 2 things happened, like, finds out about the pregnancy and she's like, let him go for his own good so he can be with his baby and the baby mama. Not asking him if that's what he wanted, not having a discussion. Of course, she makes that decision. And then her grandmother dies, and, like, all that just happens. And then we jump 18 months, and I was fuming. However, what brought it back around to a 4-star for me is, number 1, this ex-wife who had the baby, she was a very supportive ex-wife, actually, and a good baby mama. And because she is happy with her partner, she also knows that he was falling for someone during this time. And so there isn't really other woman drama, besides the fact that there's an accidental pregnancy with his ex-wife and it causes drama this way. It doesn't cause that much drama, like, overall, you know? And I liked that because lately I've been very happy when authors have made the other woman or the ex not a shrieking banshee and not causing problems. So the problem she does bring is, like, yeah, she's pregnant, but that was both of them doing that. They had sex before they were completely over, and they're having a baby, and so that is drama. But the woman herself wasn't drama, right? Okay. So anyway, enough of the spoiler parts of it. When we are now in the current time, I thought our hero went about winning the heroine over very well, and then I liked that. But actually, like, usually in a lot of books, I feel like the first half can be what's really good and then it falls apart. And for me, I was struggling through the front half. And if I wasn't reading this for a patron where I'm being paid to write in this book for them, I probably would have jumped out of it because I was like, this has too many things I don't like. So I'm very happy that I completed this. It was a 4-star read. It was a 3 on the spice scale. And yeah, the trigger warnings are loss of a loved one and accidental pregnancy of an ex. So I'm saying those because they were triggering. Alrighty, now we're going to talk about one of my 6-star reads, and it was my, like, first read for the Readathon. And it's been an anticipated book. I read this one for next in a series and as a backlist title of an author that I love. And I should have known that I would love this because a few of my friends have, but it blew me away. And that was When the Earl Met His Match by Stacy Reid. Okay, this is book 4 in the Wedded by Scandal series, and I had read books 1 and 2, and I wasn't overly impressed, right? I wasn't overly impressed, but I knew that I kind of wouldn't be, because even Stacy herself says that like she was really getting into a groove with this series. And for me, I skipped book 3. I will still read it. I'm not like skipping it forever, but I wanted to read it for this readathon because, oh, it also has disability rep. Like this one covered a bunch of prompts for me. And it has so many things I love. It's like Stacy Reid perfectly stirred together a pot of the things that Jenn loves, okay? So the setup of this is that we have Hugh Winthrop, who is the future Earl of Albury. And he decides that he wants to get a wife, and so he writes an ad in the paper. Now, he hasn't been in London society for many years. His father took him and his siblings out of it because there was a lot of scandal around them. They're all technically bastards, but they were born within the bounds of marriage, so legally they're not, and he loves them. Like, this Earl loves them, but he has taught his children that love is a disguise and like not real, and so there's a lot of that. So the Earl, he puts out an ad in the paper who's just looking for a woman who's not going to fall in love with him, and blah blah blah. And actually our heroine Phoebe, she is someone who is expecting to marry for love and nothing else, because there is a man who is a servant that she's fallen in love with, but he betrays her for money, and it's very devastating to her. But in the meantime, she's been writing letters to this, who she doesn't know that this is the Earl, and she's been writing letters kind of like heckling him about the fact that he's not even bothering to try to woo a woman, that he's just literally demanding like their pedigree and this or whatever. And so they like banter back and forth, not knowing really who each other is. Then we have a couple other layers as well, because our hero is actually a speechless hero. He can hear, but he can't speak. And he has twin younger siblings, and his father is very ill. And this is actually why he's writing the letters, because his father wants to see him married before he dies. And the father is actually someone who's very much encouraging him not to look for love, because the love actually like burned the Earl. It saw him having 3 children who weren't biologically his, even though he loves them, and he absolutely does. Like, this cranky old bat of an Earl, he loves his kids. Like, he really does. And it was very heartwarming, even though he's being a cranky old bat, right? He's so cute. But then things escalate. I know I'm telling a lot of stuff, but this is just a setup of the book, okay? It's just a setup of the book, all right? Then, when our heroine has already been, like, devastated by her love betraying her, she finds out she's pregnant. And she actually reveals this to her mother, who she doesn't overhear. Her servant overhears that the mother is planning to send her away and keep her under guard and then take her baby and give it to a baby farm. And she is devastated. She's devastated. And she doesn't see any point in reaching out to the baby daddy because he's already betrayed her for money. And also, even though he has some money now from betraying her, like, it's not like he's powerful enough to stop her parents. So what does she do? She turns to her pen pal, who she knows isn't looking to marry anyone for love. Again, doesn't know that he's a future Earl, but is hoping to throw herself on the mercy of this man and say, hey, I'll be your dutiful wife. I'll do everything you need me to do, thinking he's a wealthy merchant or like a low-level someone who wouldn't mind having a child that wasn't his, would maybe even be like, oh, a bun's already in the oven. This is great. And then she shows up. And what I absolutely loved, too, everything is laid bare. Everything is laid out on the table to begin with, right? There's no secret. She's like, I'm pregnant. I can't marry you. I'm so sorry. Let me get in contact with my brother. Her brother is actually the hero from the first book, which he doesn't have his best showing in this book. He's a naughty boy in this book. But she just lays it all out. And Hugh and her, there are some other things. Like, I promise I'm not spoiling everything. It seems like I am, but I'm not. There are some other things that, like, he just immediately takes her in. He just immediately takes her in and is like, don't you worry. You're safe now. Like, let me see if I can find it. I'm literally going to read this to you, okay? Because here's the thing, he can't speak, so he writes a lot of letters. And also sign language is used throughout this book, so she starts to learn it. But he immediately agrees to marry her, asks her to marry him, and then he gives her this letter. And I'm going to read it to you because I think it's going to sell you this book. He says this: I know you're scared, and I'm sorry for it. Thank you for agreeing to marry me, and I know the immense courage it took for you to journey this far without friends or family. We will have a marriage of mutual convenience, respect, and honor to each other. Your child will be mine, and I will not treat him or her any differently than if he or she was my own. I vow to take you and your baby into my keeping. Your safety and well-being and whatever it is that you fear, I will take care of. I ask you to trust that I will handle this for you. Hugh. And that is how he proposes to her after her just dropping on his doorstep. And that's enough. I've said enough. So there are some obstacles to them. There is, her family is looking for her. A brother who doesn't know whether she's been kidnapped or not and who has some nefarious connections, who might stick his nose into stuff. There's also the fact that Hugh has been told that he shouldn't love anyone and that will only bring him pain. There also is a communication barrier in the beginning. But there's so many beautiful things. There's great family that surrounds Hugh, even that cranky old Earl who's been teaching him bad things. And there is such tenderness between these two. And though this is a tale of a hero who believes he can't love, it is also the story of a heroine who may feel like love has burned her, but she refuses to give up on it. And this is a 6-star book. This is a favorite of the year. And boy, if historicals haven't been doing it for me in the last year, they are this year. We have 3 6-star historicals and we're only in March, and I fucking love it. So if you haven't read this, you can jump right into this one, okay? Some of my friends are jumping right to this one. Also, if you saw my interview with Stacey Reed, which I will link up here, she is planning to write 2 more books in the series, and they're about characters we meet in this book. So technically, you could just start right with this one and fill in the others later if you want to, but she has said there'll be 2 more books, and I'm pretty sure I know who they're about, but I won't spoil that for you. So 6-star book, absolutely delightful. I will be talking about that book every chance I get. I also want to give a shout out to my friend Ava's romance books, because she talks about this book all the time and it's been making me want to read it so much. But also, I'm going to read more backlog Stacey Reed. I just got in a bunch of them the other day. Okay, then I won't talk about these next 2 too much because they will be in my vlog that will be coming out. So I read A Baby for Easter by Noelle Adams. This for me was a next in a series. It was also a small town novella. I don't know which prompts I used it for, but this was the next book in the Willow Park series. This one kind of takes place around a church. The first one was about the pastor and a marriage of convenience that he was in. And this one is about the pastor's brother, Micah, who has recently come back to the church. These aren't inspirational romance, even though religion is important to the characters. I found that to be very good because I wasn't being preached at by the story. As a Christian myself, I don't need to read books where I'm being preached at. I'm pretty secure in my beliefs, but I loved it. The heroine is a librarian. She hasn't been able to find a position as a full-time librarian, so she's working part-time at the library in town and part-time as a secretary for the pastor from the first book. And this book starts off with the hero Micah having a baby dropped off, and he didn't know that a one-night stand he'd had when he was still living on the wild side had resulted in a baby until the mother actually died. And so the grandparents are old and they can't take care of a young baby, and so they bring her to the father. And now he has a baby and he's like, I don't know, should I keep her? Should I put her up for adoption? What's going to be best for her? And our heroine, he gives her a place to live and pays her to be a live-in nanny for him because he is renovating. Wow, I want to call it reinventing. Renovating. Now I can do it. A home, and there's like a room above the garage, a house above the garage, or an apartment above the garage. I can't talk, okay? It was fine. It was cute. I didn't like this one as much as the first one. And also there was no open door in this one at all, which was sad because the first one did have that. And this was supposed to be like, this is an inspirational romance. There will be it. And then there wasn't in this one. And I was sad. So this one was a 3.5. It was a really sweet story though. And I'm going to continue this series because they're very sweet. But it was only a steam puff on my rating. And I very rarely have to hand out steam puffs. Like, that's strange. Then I read Vodka and Therapy by burner account 539. This was a dreary fiction. I read this for the Prompts fan fiction and LGBTQ+. And this one was a tough read for me, actually. I know it's supposed to be. I mean, it's called Vodka and Therapy. So these two meet at a gay bar, a muggle gay bar, actually, when Harry and Dudley go out for the night. Dudley's not gay, but he has made friends with Harry after all the mess that has happened, and Dudley is encouraging him to try to find someone to date or to find someone to hook up with, and so he's been going with him to some gay bars to see if he'll meet anyone, and on a night out, he runs into Draco, and they end up hooking up, but Draco is very much deeply in the closet because it is literally a danger to his life. His father is out from Azkaban and he would kill him if he found this out. So this one involved a lot of touchy subjects, including, I forgot to write it on here, but there's self-harm. For the first few hookups, well, actually many hookups that Draco has with Harry, when he gets home, he will hurt himself, rub himself raw in the shower because he feels dirty for having slept with a man. It's very difficult. Now, that's where the therapy part comes in. And Harry finds out he's doing this. And Harry's been seeing a therapist for a while. And he very much encourages Draco to do the same. And that's where we are from there. But this fic actually takes place over a 3-year time period. It's not super long. It's their relationships over almost 3 years from the point of that first hookup to them being together and being married at the very end of it all. And so it was powerful, but it was very hard to read and it drug on for longer than I felt it should, even though, again, it wasn't super long. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was a 3 on the spice scale, and it has trigger warnings of an abusive parent, torture, a closeted hero, self-harm. There are a lot of trigger warnings, so look out for yourself with those. Ah! Spilled my drink almost. All right. And then I have the other 2 6 stars for the week. And as I said, they were rereads. So I actually reread Soul Eater just at the end of 2022 because someone wanted this one annotated. And I was only too happy to do that because I friggin' love Wynn and Danny so much. But the audiobooks for these are out, and I really wanted to listen to them, especially after my interview with Lily Main, which I will put up here for you if you would like to watch it. She was a friggin' delight. So I listened to the audiobook of Soul Eater. If you don't know, this is a post-apocalyptic. Monsters have taken over our world. The military is trying to keep things intact, try to learn out how to kill monsters. And Danny has been kind of forced to be a soldier because you either are a soldier or you are a scavenger in the wastes and you will have a very short life. And Danny comes across Wynn when the military is trying to capture him, and then Wynn ends up letting himself be captured, and he is strangely captivated by Danny. And when Wynn breaks out of this prison, he takes Danny with him and offers him to get to travel with him. And they do, and they also fall in love. So this is a 6-star book for me. And it was mostly a 6-star book because I hadn't read anything like it at all. It was so unique when I first read it. And I enjoyed it so much. And so every reread I do, it just fills me with joy. The man who narrates this does so good. And the voice that he does for Wynn is this cross between this otherworldly thing and Batman. And the sexy times with that voice. Do yourself a favor. Okay, so 6-star book, 3 on the spice scale. There is Monster Anatomy. So that is a fun, kinky thing. And then for trigger warnings, there is danger to our characters, torture, and branding that happens. That's pretty intense. And then I reread Eden. This was actually the first time I reread Eden. And this was with audiobook as well. Oh, and it was so good. I loved it so much. I also loved the voice for Eden and Hunter. This one, Hunter is actually a soldier, and him and his friend Charlie are making their way down from Minnesota down to this base. They're trying to get to this base, the same base that we like destroyed in this one. And Eden, he had actually been a prisoner in that base before, and he'd actually been tortured by humans at one point. But Eden is a very good-natured, kind soul. He's this big, purple, like, Hunter describes him as the devil because he has horns and his eyes are a little bit bigger than what human eyes would look. And he just wears a kilt and a necklace, a pendant. That's like all he wears. Big purple. He has a tail. And he's a hunky thing. And Hunter, he is this like over 6 feet, tough soldier. He has a prosthetic limb. He actually was attacked by a monster early on and they amputated from the knee down. And him and Charlie are making their way to this base to try to, you know, like not turn themselves in, but reconnect with the military, because that's what they've been doing for years. Like they've been in the military for years. That's all that they know. And like what happens is Charlie gets kidnapped by a group of monsters who want to put him into a fight club. That's basically this fight club where humans and monsters fight each other for the pleasure of other monsters and people, actually, too. And Eden ends up saving Hunter from falling to his death in a hole, and he agrees to help him. Well, I mean, he actually says, I'm going to help you catch up, because if you try to do it yourself, it'll be dangerous. And along the way, we run into Wynn and Danny. We learn more about Eden and how he's the last of his kind. And Hunter slowly starts to change his perspective of monsters and totally fall for Eden. And he finds him attractive pretty much from the beginning, which is amazing. But in this one, we have Hunter, who is our POV character. Like these books are told from the human's point of view, except for the newest book, Lore, which is its own thing. So, like, Hunter is the gruff, scarred soldier. And Eden, though he is very, very old and he's lived through so much, he sees the positive and the happiness in so many things. And so he's very much the sunshine in this relationship. And it's adorable. It's adorable, okay? It's adorable. So both of those are 6 stars. And that one is a 3.5 star on the spice scale for the reread. So that was wonderful. Then I made it through Transfigured by Ashley Mack. This is novella number 3 in her Elmwood College series. This one is a friends to lovers, and it has very interesting, like these two are very close to each other. They've been raised together. They're like 3rd generation best friends, is how to explain. Like their dads are best friends and their grandfathers are best friends, and they're best friends too. And what happens very early on in this book is that, like, our hero and heroine, they have a great relationship. What are their names? Tate and Hallie. And they've just, you know, they're making their way through college. The hero hasn't ever made a move because he's happy to, you know, just kind of let things progress naturally. But then his grandfather passes away, and he leaves in his will a note to Tate that says, Tate, if you're not married to Hallie within 6 months, not just engaged, not just dating, like if you're not married to her within 6 months, you have to wait until you're 40 to get your inheritance. He's like, grandson, this isn't to punish you or do anything like that, but don't waste time. And I just thought that was so cute. Okay, that was so cute. And so he's like, okay, grandpa, game on. And he is going to go after his best friend. And so he turns it up to a 15 and just lays it all out. And she's very overwhelmed in the beginning because she's like, I didn't know you were thinking this. And he's like, you had to have some clue that we had more going on between us. Like, you had to have some clue. So let's make it happen. And then he goes about wooing her. And it's great. Like, it's great. So I gave this 4 stars. It's a 2.5 on the spice scale. This had a lot of praise and edging. And then the trigger warning is loss of a loved one, which seemed to be kind of a theme this week. because then the last book that I finished, this was for my audiobook and for A Small Town is what I had done it for. This one is a romantic suspense. I mean, it's a suspense romance, but like it's romantic suspense. And this was one I had on my shelves. This is Be Still My Heart by Emily McIntyre and Sav R. Miller. I had grabbed this one because it was actually at a Barnes & Noble that I had stopped through, and I was like, cool, I haven't heard much about this one. This book, like I said, was pretty much a straight up romantic suspense. There's a serial killer on this small island. Our hero Lincoln is a lobsterman. He's a grumpy ex-SEAL. And one day when he goes out to pull up his traps, there is a dead body in it. Local police aren't doing a good enough job, and so police from a bigger city are sent in, and with them is Morgan Sloan, who has helped recently catch a serial killer, and she gets brought in to help, and she meets a lot of resistance from the police force there, and especially from Lincoln, who he is immediately attracted to her. In fact, that was kind of one of my issues with the book, is that they both had like instant boners for each other, and that's just something I've been more sensitive to lately, because I'm like, why? Because she's pretty, you want to fuck her. Like, instantly. That's it. That's the only thing. Okay, whatever. But then they go about trying to figure this out as more and more bodies pile up. I apologize for my horrible talking today. Blah. And we try to figure out who the serial killer is. The thing with this book is I'm going to refer back to the first book I talked about today, which is there is a very intense situation happening. There are bodies piling up. Quite a few people die in this book, and I never felt the danger, even though like our hero's mother very much could be in the line of fire of this serial killer because of who's being killed. And I never felt enough danger for his mother. I never felt connected enough to these people. And I really think that this is something that I've had pointed out by some friends that I really respect, is that when you immediately make it about their attraction to each other, I don't feel the same connection to the characters, and then I don't feel the stakes when they're in dangerous situations, which, let's be real, when I'm reading a romance, because I mean this is still a romance with an HEA, there's only so much like risk you're really in anyway, and if you lose all that tension because we're just boning all the time and in dangerous places and thinking about sucking cock all the time and not the case, you lose that part of the story, right? So that was an issue for me, but I didn't hate this. The audiobook was well performed, and this is something I was listening to while working on my cross stitching and working on some sewing projects. So I had a good enough time with it. I just, at the end of the day, like, this isn't memorable to me. The case isn't memorable to me, and the characters certainly aren't memorable to me. So that's where I sit with that. I gave this 3.5 stars, which was probably generous. I wasn't sure who the killer was, so I think that's why I gave it an extra 0.5 star. Like, I was shocked with who was doing it. And it was a 3 on the spice scale. And then obviously the trigger warnings are murder, as well as mention of childhood molestation, not to either of our main characters, but it is a motive of the killer, and it gets brought up. So we'll talk about that. So anyway, there we go. This was a relatively quick weekly wrap up. We were under an hour today, but like I said, there will be more discussion about both the books that I really loved and the ones I didn't love in my vlog that's going up, as well as showing you some of my sewing projects, and you just get a really good hint at like the kind of vlogs I make for my patrons. So if you watch that vlog that's going to come up and you're interested in it, definitely check out my Patreon. The $10 level and above gets you access to weekly and monthly videos that I put out on there. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you to everyone who supports me and helps make this possible. If you're not able to monetarily support, you have supported me by making it all the way to the end of this video. So leave me some hearts down below to show me you care, and we will see you next time. Bye.